Hey guys, Emilio here. I just wanted to start off this video by saying thank you to everyone who has liked and subscribed my content to date. I really appreciate the support you guys are dropping my way. It makes me feel really good about sharing my experiences with you and all the pros and cons that came with this injury, which I'm sure you all who are watching this know well enough by now, can impact your life in ways you didn't realize it really could. So thank you so much for that. Now to address my delay since my last video, a lot of you have been asking why I haven't put any updates or posted anything else of late. Since my last video, I didn't really know where to go from there. My plan was to start a different kind of treatment, but it's really expensive, and I'll get into that in just a minute. But I really didn't have anything else in the works in relation to a possible solution to the problem. So I didn't want to post something just for the sake of posting it. I don't want you guys to click on anything that I produce and feel like you've wasted your time watching it. So what I've done is taken a little bit of time to try and figure out what else I can put on the table. Now recently I had a question from a Victor Flavius. Victor asked me a broad question, but he wants to know if I'm still able to do things like lifting luggage up to the cabinet in an airplane, or do I need an assistant? So when Victor asked me this question, it made me realize that my symptoms haven't gotten better, but they also haven't gotten worse. And I didn't realize that that in itself was worth talking about, because it is. The reason my symptoms haven't gotten worse is because I'm very careful managing the inabilities with an ability to continue to do a certain type of activity without aggravating my injury. And I think making you guys aware of those certain little things will improve in your day-to-day and perhaps overall your quality of life. Today's video is going to showcase to you the general things that you might do throughout the day and how I do it without causing myself any further grief. So to kick it off, we're going to start with Victor's question and we're going to go from there. Alrighty, so for Victor's question, he wants to know how I go about putting hand luggage into the overhead compartment when I'm traveling, when I'm on a plane. To begin with, I don't have your traditional hand luggage. I don't like the inconvenience of having to drag two things around the airport, into the taxi, all the way to the accommodation. It's a pain in the ass even before I had an injury. So in place of the small hand luggage, I travel with a backpack. It's the same size in relation to capacity, but I can also sling it on my back and carry it that way, which is even better given that I've got a wrist injury now, so it's one less thing to have to drag around and risk sort of aggravating my symptoms with. Now, this is also convenient because just like your hand luggage, it's got a handle on the top, and more than likely you're probably going to have a handle on the side. A lot of them do, just like the suitcases do. But even if you don't, you're at least going to have this, so this will help you anyway. When you're going to lift or put pressure in your wrist or your hand, that's your dominant hand or your off hand, it doesn't matter. If you've got this injury, the majority of the times you're going to aggravate it is when you put weight through your wrist with an open palm. So every time I lift, I have a clenched fist and a rigid forearm. I use my fist, my forearm, my bicep, and my shoulder every time I lift, and I think about it, and I'm slow and precise with my movements. The days of you just doing things on a whim are gone. Until you actually determine how you're going to resolve it, whether that's through injury management or whether or not you have surgery and it's successful, you're going to have to start being smarter about how you do things. So this, usually I'll grab it by the handle, even with my dominant hand, which is my injured wrist, and I'll put my hand underneath it and I'll slide it in. Now my left hand doesn't have any major injuries or tears like my right hand does. So usually it works. So rigid wrist, I'll grab it off the ground with my sore hand, and I use my non-injured hand to push underneath and slide it into the overhead compartment like that. Remember, as long as your wrist is rigid, usually you should be okay with gripping the sides of your bag or your luggage and putting it through like this. As long as your wrist remains rigid through that movement, you should be able to get away with doing it the other way I do it, which is like so. Hopefully that clears that up for you. Okay, next on the list, and I wish somebody took the time to show me this because it was one of the most common things that was aggravating my injury or exacerbating my symptoms. And it didn't really click to me until I did it once, and I was like, why haven't I been doing this the entire time? So this may seem like a silly thing to address or like a duh moment, but it didn't click to me, so I'm going to show it to you just so that in case it hasn't, it will now. And this is turning on taps in your house. Okay, so most houses, most bathrooms, most sinks have this sort of tap. Now, you generally, if you didn't have this injury before, you probably find you're opening the taps like this. Let me take this off. Like so. Okay, you're putting all the force through your wrist and you're using your forearm and your wrist to twist this puppy on to open the water release, right? So every time I did that when I first injured myself, the force, and it is force and weight bearing because I'm using force to put pressure through my wrist to twist this on, used to cause me aggravations to no end. So to save you the time and aggravation, I want you to learn from the mistakes that I made and have figured out a roundabout way. So now instead of using my wrist, I'll just use my fingers to twist these on and off. And this in no way aggravates my TFCC. Again, the things I'm showing you work for me. It may not work for you, but try it because it could help you and prevent you aggravating it in the long run. Turn on, turn off. On, off. As much as possible, put that activity all through the fingers. Seems obvious, seems silly, but trust me, it's going to help you out. So some of you guys out there who are regularly active at the gym have been asking me, hey Emilio, do you ever work out at the gym? If so, how do you go about lifting weights without aggravating your symptoms? And it's a very good question. And guys, the only short answer to this is trial and error. Like I said, when I do my lifting, I make sure I have a clenched fist, a rigid forearm. I use my biceps, my shoulders, my forearm, the entire arm in the process of lifting anything. It's just the way that I've had to adapt. And when it comes to doing things like bicep curls, I recommend staying away from the cable machines and sticking to free weights as often as you humanly can, because it doesn't restrict the type of movements you're going to be able to do in any way, making sure that you're comfortable through the entire range of motion. So just to give you some examples, when using dumbbells to do bicep curls, right? So I always maintain a rigid posture. See, my wrist never bends. I'm never doing anything like this, and definitely nothing like that, right? Always a rigid posture. My wrist, my forearm, my biceps. And that's whether or not you're doing shoulders. Everything I do, rigid wrist. Even the ones when you're going up to do your shoulder press with the barbell, with the dumbbells, always a rigid wrist. Never bend the wrist, never twist it. Keep it rigid and you can do most activities with little to no impact in your wrist. Again, my injury is going to allow me a certain range of movements. Your injury might only restrict you to other ranges of movements. It's all trial and error. So whatever you do when you're going to try to do something different, try it with low weights first. These are 4 kilos. On average, I won't go any more than 10. You can still get reasonably strong when doing that in the beginning. And the more you start to pace yourself through those activities, the stronger all the muscles in your hand, your forearm, and your arm in general are going to be, which is all going to be beneficial to supporting the majority of the weight so that you're not putting it through the TFCC. So one of the other things I'm asked a lot is that, hey Emilio, I'm pretty physically active, or at least I was before the injury, and one of the things that I have to do or have to try to maintain is my push-ups. Could you do it before? Did you do it before? And now that you are injured, how do you go about doing it now if you do it all? So the one reason I'm able to still do push-ups when I am feeling active is because of this. This device allows you to grip and maintain that rigid wrist and a clenched fist, as I said, which is my go-to practice when lifting anything, which includes my own body weight. So I use these, and slow and steady, I do my push-up. Always slow, always steady, always controlled. And by doing that, I'm able to do it without causing myself any aggravation or any further symptoms. Okay, so hopefully by now I've been able to give you a few tips and tricks about what I do to help maintain a healthy wrist without aggravating it any further. But I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, that's all well and good, Emilio, but what about all the other things that I do that you haven't covered in your video? What am I supposed to do about that? And that's a valid question. So what I'd like to make sure is that if you take anything from this video, it's this. Find a method of lifting, of applying pressure in your wrist that doesn't aggravate it when you do so, and then utilize that method in everything you do. If it works for one thing, it's usually going to work for another, and if it works for that, it's usually going to work for a range of things. So to give you one final example, bamboo fencing. I'll explain. All right, here's your typical bamboo fence. It's about 1800 high by about 900 wide. I had to redo my entire backyard, and I could have hired a contractor to do it, but that would have been a lot more money than me doing it myself with my old man. So it was a big concern for me. I was racking my mind like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? And I just took a breath. I went and saw the panels in the storeroom. I picked one up and I played with it, and I figured it out. You know what? I can actually do it using the method that I've taught myself to do. So observe. Rigid wrist, clenched fist. No problems at all. To give you an idea of just how possible, or what is possible when you do figure it out, I managed to put up 44 panels. All throughout the backyard of my house. And not once did it cause me any grief or any aggravation. That being said, if you are in the process of doing something, remember to stay strict on your movements. The stricter you are and the more cautious you are when shifting or lifting anything, the better off you're going to be for it in the long run. So next on the list, a little bit of quality of life type tips. I'm going to show you how to wipe your asshole after you take a shit. Just kidding. Alright guys, so that wraps up my how I go about doing my day-to-day life and the measures I put in place to make sure that I didn't make my condition any worse than what it was, and the things that I'm doing to help keep myself on a non-surgical basis, right? Like I showed you, I really wanted to throw in that bamboo fence in the end there to give you an idea of what's actually possible. A lot of the things that come with this injury are psychological. And I hate it when a specialist tells me that. But now that I've experienced it, I know it to be true. Because psychologically, when you lose the ability to do things that you did before, you start to think, oh, what else can't I do? And then from transitioning to what else can't I do, you go to, I can't do it. And a lot of the times you go to that train of thought before you even try. Allow yourself an opportunity to try first, like I did with the bamboo fencing, and then you'll see that there are a lot more that you still can do, irrespective of the things that you've lost the capacity to do. I just remembered that I told you that in the beginning of the video that I was working on something that I hadn't quite got my head around yet. So here's an explanation. As you know, I've tried a few things to try and rehabilitate myself non-surgically. Probably one of the major ones has been the human growth hormone course that I took. It was a 3-month injection, but I took a very low dose. It was a safe dose, and it did absolutely nothing for me. So the other research that I've been working towards have been stem cell injections. Now, whether you've done research on it or you haven't, the one thing that you're probably going to recognize with that whole process is that it's extremely expensive. Here in Australia, the injections range anywhere from $6,000 to $30,000 per injection. So it's something I simply cannot afford. I am, however, looking at ways of being sponsored for it, getting some people on board who are prepared to trial their product, to showcase it to the world, to say, hey, it does work, and this is an example of it. If I can be sponsored, if I can get someone to back me on that, or a group of people to back me on that, I am both ready and willing to accept all the risks involved. I would do from start to finish, obviously my MRIs, my X-rays, showcasing the evidence to suggest that I do have the injury to begin with, interviewing the people involved who will be administrating the stem cell injections. I'll show you the process as it unfolds, and I'll show you the outcome. If you guys know anyone or are yourself in that industry and can help me figure out a way to make that a reality, I'm all ears. Leave a comment below. Otherwise, all the best on your journey. If you do have any solutions, or you bump across something that has just changed your life, that's non-surgical or even surgical, and you want to just share your experience, by all means, link it down below and let's help spread the word. I hope that this video has been helpful for you guys. Again, I want to thank you for liking and subscribing to my content. I appreciate the support. And if you have any more questions or anything else that I haven't answered that you'd like me to, please drop a comment below and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as possible.